Bucknutters. It's Tuesday, December 6, 2016. I'm Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. Joined, as always, on Tuesday by Duane Long. Duane, not much stress today. We'll be gliding. How are you feeling this fine Tuesday?
Oh, well, it's a beautiful time to be a Buckeye. We're going to compete for the national championship again. Seems like that's become old hat, and I'm glad to be wearing that hat.
I agree. As I have said repeatedly, it is a Meyer-Saban world. When the textbook is written, this chapter in history is really going to have two names on it. Let's just hope the M comes before the S. But let's talk about it. Not much consternation, actually, when it came right down to the announcement. I was more nervous, but just the amount of punditry saying Ohio State was just in. It all worked out. Give us your vibe on Ohio State getting picked and then the opening matchup against Clemson, a team we know all too well.
Well, the one interesting thing to me was dropping from 2 to 3. I didn't see where Clemson was so dominating that you would move them ahead of Ohio State. Maybe it was just kind of a little penalty for not making the Big Ten championship game. I really have to say that I would have put Penn State in there instead of Washington. For the same reason that Ohio State got in, which was body of work, strength of schedule. Washington just didn't have it, and Penn State did. Penn State played 3 top 10 teams, beat 2 of them. They're on, an 8-9 game win streak? They just won the Big Ten championship, come from behind victory, down 20-7. They didn't fold. They came back and won the football game. Nobody's playing better than Penn State right now except maybe Alabama. So I really, Washington, I mean, they played, I don't know if USC was ranked when they played Washington. I don't think they were. I think they came in after that. The only team that was ranked that Washington played was Utah, which was number 17 at the time, and Washington needed a late kick return to beat them. I wasn't that impressed with their strength of schedule. So that's the biggest thing. As far as the matchup's concerned, bring it on. I think if this team plays like it did against Nebraska and Maryland, they're national champions. Which team is going to show up is what's going to determine whether get by Clemson and play Alabama or not. That's really what it comes down to, Dan, is which team is going to show up. I hope that with these extra 15 practices, spend a lot of time on the passing game, getting people on the same page. But I think this team is absolutely capable of winning a national championship.
I agree. I don't feel as confident as I did, obviously, 2 years ago. Just because, and I'll tell you this, to me, Zeke was just an absolute difference maker. There's just only so many players you can have where you can run a basic offense, and they can take almost any play to the house. As good as we are now, and this is no slight on the team. This is just those backs coming along, once a generation. So I do think they obviously have a chance. And listen, Clemson's defense, if you watch them play Virginia Tech, it's not a great defense. It may have great defensive talent. We all know about the long list of guys they have, Christian Wilkins, et cetera. But their secondary was beaten like a drum against Virginia Tech. And they made Virginia Tech's quarterback look good enough that I started looking him up for NFL reasons. So they're beatable. And this is also one of those times where I just have to rely on Urban Meyer and Greg Schiano, et cetera. Given the extra time, I have to believe they can get things working. I do think the key is, can they do enough in the passing game to spread the field out, and can they do enough to buy JT some time? Because obviously they have probably 3 or 4 NFL defensive linemen on Clemson who could turn Isaiah Prince into a helicopter, which makes me nervous. I assume this entire time has to be spent on that. They get access to the film too, the coaches. So Would it be fair to say that Isaiah Prince and the offensive line would be your biggest concern going into the game, or am I taking too much for granted?
I'm worried about just the passing game, that we're not clicking. It's just not working consistently. You know, that's my biggest concern. Isaiah Prince has not been he's really been beaten. He's had a rough first year. Let's just leave it at that. But that isn't why the passing game is not working. It's really not. We're not completing balls. We're not throwing the ball. You know, so many times I'm watching JT just stand there. And he's got time. You know, we're talking about, well, Prince is getting beat. Yeah, but JT still has had time, and he's not cutting the ball loose. We're just inefficient throwing the ball, especially down the field. That's the biggest thing that worries me. You were talking about 2 years ago. I think this defense is probably better than that defense. So that's a plus. But yeah, we don't have the bell cow. We don't have a guy that we can just turn around and hand the ball to and he can make something happen. We're seeing what that guy's doing at the NFL level.
Yeah, I'm saying that wasn't any bell cow either.
Yeah, oh yeah, he's obviously a unique talent. There's no doubt about that. And you know, we just don't have that right now. Be nice
I'm not
to
even saying
have
it's a negative on the. Yeah, I'm not even saying it's a negative on the staff that we don't have a guy like that. I'll make that clear. I'm just saying I'm not sure we even knew as good as we thought Zeke was at the time. He was actually better, and it's being proven now because he's probably the best running back walking planet Earth. So it's spoiled us to some extent. But I mean, I'm not. We won't spend too much time on that. Let's get to recruiting. Obviously, what Ohio State is doing is truly spectacular. Whatever happens down the stretch, and they've already probably solidified themselves with the highest average rating per recruit that they'll ever have or they've had to this point. The fact that they're even in it down the stretch with the number of five-star guys, I mean, if you just look at the top 10, they're in it down the stretch for so many guys. But in the last 7 days since we talked, they did get a commitment from Baron Browning. I hope people understand what type of prospect this is. This is like the ideal defensive player that every high school team wants to have. He's probably the best outside linebacker in the country, and Ohio State was able to get his commitment. It does sound like their final push at the game did it. If you could share with everybody what you think of Browning as a prospect, just kind of your projection for him, where you see him at Ohio State, et cetera.
Oh, he's one of the best linebackers we've ever recruited. It's that simple. As great a recruiting machine as this program has been, he's just right up there with the best that's ever come through here. The guy he's a big frame guy because I really think that I'd stick him right in the middle of the field, Dan. I'd put him at middle linebacker. He's definitely got the game to play that. If you watch him on film, they just kind of back him up a little bit and just let him run to the ball from right in the middle of the field. He's big enough to play that position, but he's also just such an elite athlete. You know, I watched him just recently in the state playoffs. He intercepted a ball, and he looked like a cornerback making a play on the ball, and ran it in. Now there was a penalty on it, and he got called back, but it didn't detract from the play that he made. I mean, someone was talking on the message boards about, you know, I'd play him both ways, play him at H-back, and my first thought was, now. And then I said, wait a minute. When I look at the athlete this guy is and his size, he's actually the perfect size for an H-back. It's just an enormous get to go into Texas and pull out a recruit of this caliber. I've seen a lot of linebackers this year, and he's as good as anybody in the country. No doubt about it. That's huge. I think he plays right away. He may start next year. He's a physically ready to play kid at right now to play at the college level. No doubt in my mind.
So as is customary in the scouting profession or around this thing, and I can tell you this from having talked to guys, they do always want to compare the current guy to an older guy. It doesn't mean it's him, but they do like to have comparisons. So I was trying to think, and the best one I can come up with is LeVar Arrington. What do you think about that?
that really, you even think about the physical, how he looks, the build. Yeah, he plays. That's the kind of game the guy has. He's that size. That's a really outstanding comparison. You could put him
He's
outside.
also, this is going to sound weird. Yeah, look at the videos. He has the biggest hands I've ever seen. I'm not kidding. If you watch the post, I know it's a weird thing to say about somebody, but if you watch the post-game interview, which, by the way, the guy interviewing refers to him as a corner, and he doesn't stop him. That's how much they use him there. He looks like, his hands, he looks like he could almost grow into there will be times, I'll bet you, I'm not sure he'll ever do this here, but he's the kind of guy you could put his hand in the dirt and rush him on third down passing situations. He's that versatile and athletic frame-wise. I hope people grasp what they've recruited, because it's going to be hard to go into Texas and recruit like this going forward. I think there'll be a Tom Herman honeymoon coming. But the idea that they're going to win in there and got J.K. Dobbins and possibly Okudah and this dude is just, it's friggin' staggering and very impressive. Last night,
this guy here, you said you're talking about him. I would not be surprised. He's such a big kid. Putting him down, you could slide him down and just leave him there. He could do that. He's got all the tools to be absolutely a great football player.
It's funny that you mentioned H-back. Having the chance to cover some of the NFL and high school and college along the way, Van Browning is going to be a professional football player. This is the same way I felt about Jerome Baker. I don't know if you remember this. I was like, we should put him at the H. He can literally play. I don't think he could play defensive end, but Baker could play safety. He could play. You wouldn't want him at corner, but there's some slower receivers he could cover. That's what I'm saying about Browning, is that they are just the best athlete on the field at their size. And when they're motivated, because we saw Baker at East Lansing, as opposed to what we saw him in the game, that's what professional football players look like. So just an incredible get. I think the idea of getting him down the stretch in an absolute head-to-head battle with Alabama also does wonders for the program long term. Today, however, we will be getting the word on another commitment, Trey Smith. Some people think the best offensive lineman in the country. He's in the mix for sure, out of Tennessee. He's rumored to be down to Alabama, Tennessee, and Ohio State. Had heard some stuff about him possibly leaning towards Ohio State. We now hear he may be leaning towards Tennessee. Again, that announcement will be at 4:30 today. The ceremony will start. They're expecting it to be at 4:52. I believe he's doing it on television, so we might actually get some exact times on this. Your opinion on Trey Smith, the player, and then maybe what it would mean to have him in the mix.
Well, for me, he's the best offensive lineman in the country. He's a natural left tackle, but he can. The guy, putting him on the offensive line with Josh Myers, one on each side. Yeah, that's what you want. The guy he knocks people down and enjoys it. Very athletic kid. That's what you're looking for in a left tackle. He's a big dancing bear. He's in great shape. Big frame to add even more weight, and it's not going to affect his athleticism. He would be a huge get, considering how short we are on tackles right now. That would be a massive get. And the fact that he's a left tackle. That's what he's born to play. As far as what you were asking me, where's he fit? That's it, left tackle. And I think he would be. I don't think he'd start because Jamarco Jones has really done a great job this year. He's one of the guys. When you're not talking about an offensive lineman, that means he's playing well. And Jamarco Jones has played really well this season. But this is a guy who plays right away. He would not redshirt. They would just put him in there and let him get ready to be the starter when Jamarco Jones leaves. Be a massive get, considering our depth situation.
So the Buckeyes were in it down the stretch. Definitely have a shot today, though. We're all here in Tennessee. Anything can change. Don't forget that this announcement will be around the 4:30 time. We'll have obviously complete coverage of that. And then we'll finish with a little bit on Marvin Wilson. I thought this was a pipe dream. Now it does seem like he's considering us. Thankfully, he was at the Oklahoma game when we were in Norman, and he was at the game this past weekend, so good marketing on our part. Your feelings on Marvin Wilson, hypothetically, where would he fit? To me, he's not that recruiting has had any picadillos, but he's the one player or type that we have not bagged under Meyer, which is the elite plugger.
And that's what he is. He's a guy that he's athletic enough to play the 3 technique, but he's a guy, he's a space eater. He's going to go in, you can put him at the 1, and he's going to make things happen from that position. I mean, he's going to be at such an advantage quickness-wise as a 1 technique. You're not expecting that out of a 1 technique player. You just want a guy that's big and he can hold the point and tie up a couple of blockers. And if he does that, just like I go back to former Steeler Casey Hampton, made the Pro Bowl one year with 16 tackles, because that's what you want a 1 technique to do. You want him in there just clogging up the hole and making sure that you're not just going to run up the middle. And that's what this guy can do. But he's athletic enough to make plays. He'll get in the backfield. He'll chase down the quarterback. He'll chase down backs. As you said, it's the one thing where we have not really landed an elite guy. And, I've always said recruiting is like politics. It's local. And we just don't see a lot of these guys in this part of the country. You're seeing them all over the South, and players tend to stay home. If they don't stay in state, most of them stay in the region. So it's been hard to get them, and if we could get Marvin Wilson, that would be huge. It would be one of the recruiting coups of Urban Meyer's time. I'll say that. To pull that guy out of Texas like that, yeah, that would be one to remember.
If they pull J.K. Dobbins, Baron Browning, Jeffrey Okudah, and Marvin Wilson out of Texas, that would go into the pantheon of specific recruiting achievements, really all time in the history of the sport. And like I said, we better get it done now before Tom Herman takes over that state. We appreciate Duane taking over this podcast. It's been a fun time. Like I said, Trey Smith committing later this afternoon at his school in Tennessee. We will be there with bells on. Let's hope he makes the right decision. But regardless, you get complete coverage here at Bucknuts. Stick with us. Have a great one, Bucknutters.